Welcome to the Silverlight video series. My name is Sean Wildermuth. Today we're going to be talking about working with the Silverlight host object itself. We're going to show you a couple of techniques to get at data about the host. Now today we're working with another simple piece of XAML. This just shows a simple video, and I'll go ahead and show that to you quickly. And what we want to do is we want to go ahead and use the host object to do a couple of interesting things that are only available to the Silverlight host itself. Let's go over to our scene JavaScript file and take a look. One of the things we can do is we have a button. One of the things we can do that we have hooked up is in our XAML. Our media element allows us to actually, let me go to the end here. If we click on the media itself, it fires a player click event, which simply allows us to do some work when someone clicks on the face of the image. In this handler, we can first, in this handler, we're going to deal with the host object, so we need to get it first. Sender is going to be the XAML element that actually causes to happen, in this case the media player, but we're not all that concerned with that. What we want to do is call the getHost method of the XAML element, and this can be any XAML element to get the host, to get that Silverlight object. Once we have it, we can do a couple of things. What I'm going to do is actually make the content go full screen. This is a facility of Silverlight to show your XAML in full screen mode, so that it takes up the entire window and the user can actually press escape to get back to the regular screen. So let's actually watch that happen. What we're doing here is we're saying host.content, which is a sub-object of the host, and then we're setting the full screen to whatever it was before. So this allows us to control every time they click it, it's going to go into full screen mode. If they click it again, it'll go out of full screen mode, even though escape will also take us out of full screen mode. Let's watch this for a moment. So here we have the video playing in regular mode, but if we click on the video, it'll take us into this full screen mode. Now you notice it didn't make it take up the entire screen or anything like that. It just brought it into this full screen mode. If we hit escape, it'll take us back to the normal view. Now this is not the Internet Explorer full screen mode. It's actually taking over the entire screen itself to show the Silverlight asset. Now that's interesting, but let's go ahead and use an event on the host, and in the Silverlight load handler, the first thing that it's handed is the name of the host control. So in this case, we don't need to actually call getHost. We have a reference to it. And we're going to call the host, which is this object, .content again, and there is an event called onFullScreenChange. And this is an event that is fired when the full screen changes from either full screen or back to regular screen. This is fired in both of those cases, anytime the full screen property is changed. And I want it to call a JavaScript function called onFullScreenChange. So I go ahead and just set that up there. Now this is a little different from the syntax for adding handlers in other parts of the object, because this is actually a JavaScript event. This isn't a XAML or a Silverlight event. So by specifying the name of the function, we don't actually need to call add event listener like we would on other elements. So this is going to call the onFullScreenChange function we have down here every time the full screen changes. And what our goal here is to go ahead and change the size of our XAML to take up the entire screen. So let's look at the XAML for just a moment. There's one piece that you're going to want to see, and I've added a render transform to my XAML. And what this render transform does is allows me to scale the entire canvas, or the entire asset really, to any scaling I want. And what I have here by default in this resizer is that it leaves it at its normal size. It's scaled 100% by 100% or 1 to 1. And I've gone ahead and named this because we're going to need to get reference to this in our code. Let's go back to the event handler for full screen change. And like we did before, we're going to get the host from the sender, and the sender in this case is going to be the Silverlight control itself, or like we did before, we're going to go ahead and get the host from the sender of the event, and then we're going to get a reference to that resizer we just looked at. And I'm doing that by calling the host again, the content, which is that sub-element that gives us access to the content, and calling find name to get our resizer object. And this is going to be the actual scale transform. Then I have a little code here that says if the screen is already showing full screen, then go ahead and set the scale X and Y to the larger elements to take up the full screen. We have to do some calculations to figure out exactly how much to scale the screen. There's no way to tell it to immediately take up the full screen, and I'll get into how that works in a moment. If it's not full screen, I go ahead and resize it back to just 1 and 1. This allows us to, when the full screen changes, we can go ahead and reset the size to normal. Now we could have put all of this code in the click event, and the reason we need to use the event to do it instead of just doing it on the click, because here we're handling switching back and forth, is because the user can also press the escape key to exit the full screen mode. So we, by hitting the escape key, Silverlight automatically changes the full screen back to false for us. So we need to do this in this event. So a couple of other interesting pieces. In order to figure out how much to scale our object X and Y to fill the entire screen, we need to know how large the Silverlight control is. And when it goes full screen, it takes up, not surprisingly, the entire screen, not the original amount specified. And so what I'm doing is I'm getting the actual width of the Silverlight control when we're in full screen, and then I'm taking the width of our root element, and this is, if we look at the XAML, this is what our root canvas is specified here as. Getting the width of the root element, what it's supposed to be, and dividing the actual width by that amount to get a ratio, and that ratio becomes how much we're going to scale it. Doing the same thing with height here, and the original root's height. So what this does when we run it, so if I click on it, it'll go ahead and scale up the entire thing to take the entire screen. Now we could do some smarter things about scaling and keeping aspect ratio and such, but this is a very simple design that should allow us to go back and forth between the full screen mode and the non-full screen mode. Does that make sense? Well, that's a couple of little tricks for working with the Silverlight host, and I hope and thanks for joining me.